seem we had some technical difficulty there. Happy 420. Let's get high. Yes. They say it's the cough to get you off. Well, as we go into this month of Tammuz, the month in which Rome came and destroyed the temple. Actually, both temples on the same day, the 9th of Av. But we're in Tammuz, the month before the month of Av. Both temples were destroyed on the same day, 500 years apart. But it began in Tammuz, on the 17th of Tammuz, when Rome broke through the outer walls of the city of Jerusalem. And it took them 3 weeks of fighting their way to the temple until they got to the temple. And they and it says that the Kohanim, who were the people who worked in the temple, that they were focused in prayer. And if they had, and they were meditating on a particular phrase in Tehillim, in Psalms, and it says if they had finished this phrase, they would have manifested angels all around the temple, and no one could have entered. But Rome entered a few moments earlier, broke everyone's concentration, and as a result, they sacked the temple. They did like some really terrible things. And the people who worked there, according to Josephus, who was a Jewish historian who had turned and became a Roman historian, and he was there and witnessed it and talked about how the Kohanim were just throwing themselves off into the fire, that there was just no reason to live. And this date is, every year, the 9th of Av, we fast for 24 hours on the 9th of Av because it's such a sad day. But it says that one day this will become a day of celebration. And so each year we hope, but it starts 3 weeks ahead in this month, in the month of Tammuz, when they broke through the walls surrounding the city of Jerusalem and began the sack of Jerusalem, and began the 2,000-year exile of the Jewish people. Long time to be exiled. Though there are other people like the Kurds who have been exiled for longer. They were actually one of the very original peoples on the, after the flood, called Kurdal. And they lived in what is now Iran. But Iran came and said, no, we want this land. And they had to leave. And they've been nomadic ever since then, but remain to be a people, of their own identity, their own genealogy. And the Jewish people were also an ancient people. We go back like the Arab people, almost 4,000 years. And but for the Jewish people, the way we remain, because the exile took us to all corners of the world. Whereas like the Kurdish exile, they remained nomadic, remained together. They went into an area and people came in, and they went to another area. And now they're in northern Iraq and want to make a Kurdistan, their own country, just like the Palestinians want to make their own country, and Israel wants to make their own country. And the thing is, because we're right at the end of the 6,000 years of the human calendar, that after 6,000 years, we go into 1,000 years of women, 1,000 years of peace. And for sure, by that time, the male agenda will have become the female agenda. And life will look very differently. Nonetheless, it's important to look back at what happened and what are our historical ties to the past, because the world is not going to really change very much. It's pretty much all spoken for. Now they're arguing about the Arctic, who has rights. So every bit of the earth has really been exploited, and in the next 200 years, a whole lot's not going to change. I mean, there might be some minor changes, but really things are not going to change, as far as like who lives where. And all the prophecies about the future are coming true in our time. But we need to open our eyes to actually see like what is going on. And the thing is, to understand this, and to understand, really have to understand the power of Abraham, who came from the Tower of Babel, who knew the secret of speech and was able to make for each of his two children, Yishmael and Yitzchak, their own language, Arabic and Hebrew. And because language at that point was, iconic, I mean, when they wanted to write something down, they used icons. They didn't have phonetic language. Abraham made these phonetic languages. As a result, each son became a great people. It was like introducing, computers when all people had were typewriters. Those who had computers had a huge advantage over the people who didn't. And so many people came and wanted to work for them, and whatever, and everyone got rich, and it was good times. But at that point, the world was a very empty place. And it wasn't really until the last couple of hundred years when, I guess 500 years, which is interesting. That sort of goes along with when the Kabbalah was revealed in the world. It was also about 500 years ago, revealing the secret that would open up the Zohar, which was written 2,000 years ago. And of course, 2,000 years ago was when everything was written down, because Rome was destroying Israel and throwing the people out into exile. So if we didn't write it down, we wouldn't remain a people, because it wasn't enough that we were genetically Jewish, but rather that that we have an obligation to do the 613 commandments. We are the chosen people, and that's what we were chosen to do. And we can't do those without the oral tradition. And certainly the oral tradition would have been lost if everyone just went in all different sorts of ways and tried to pass down what had been passed down for 1,000 years orally, because this oral tradition is what explained the Torah. The Torah can't be understood, without the oral explanation. So they wrote it down, and this is called the Talmud, and also written down the Medrash, a kind of an extension of that. Also, but the Zohar wasn't written later. The Zohar was written in heaven, and it was given to the world like 1,000 years later. it's taken us, and so it came about 700 years ago, and then the Kabbalah was about 500 years ago, and a couple hundred years later, and then the Hasidim, they took this knowledge and they fed it to the people, and that's how it got to all of us, because now it's available for everybody. And what it does, in the same way that 500 years ago they started traveling around the earth and seeing the secrets of our planet, in the same way that spiritual light was being released in the world, and it was growing, and just like the discoveries around the earth were growing, so was this knowledge growing, because they were going to converge at one point at the end of days. What does it mean, the end of days? End of days doesn't mean that everything's going to be destroyed. It means it's the end of the calendar. Those are the end of days. The calendar runs out, because the Hebrew calendar, not really a Hebrew calendar, we adapted it, but it was the original calendar that began with the advent of the first man and woman 5,781 years ago. And those who would dispute that by science, I would dispute science. Because science measures time in a line, and line is really is a spiral, and they're not, giving I forget the word I want for that. They're not giving relevance to the spiral, and so their whole idea of understanding time is just inaccurate. As most things, the facts. Often the facts that they see are accurate, but the way they interpret them is inaccurate. and they almost, they do it willingly, because the way academia is set up is that when you go into academia, you can only further what has already been written. You can't throw anything into academia that hasn't already been there, which means like new things, like new discoveries, they can only be fit in if they fit into what's already there. but you can't like contradict what's there, because it's based on hundreds of years of academia. That's what academia does, that they just, they keep building on this stuff. And therefore, if you want to go into academia, you have to learn everything beforehand, before you can be one of those who's qualified to then extend it into the future. But academia doesn't take in the idea of truth, because it's not really looking for truth. It's just looking for the framework of reality, and which they are defining. From the atom to the universe to the psychology to the history, everything is being defined by academia. Excuse me. And but all of this, see, this whole thing is all this veneer is a veneer reality. It's a very thin, a very really fragile reality, because it's really a manufactured reality that they decide what reality is, and they try to keep out everything else that would refute that. And they have their way of doing things, and they have their ambition, which is to rule the world. But thank God, time has run out on Rome, because they got 2,000 years, which they counted, 20 years ago. And at 2020, which, there's always this transition period. And 2020, there was a collusion of 777. And because the prick from Moco was elected in the year 5777. And when he was inaugurated, the day he was inaugurated, he was 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days. And on the day that COVID was declared a pandemic on March 11th, 2020, there were 7,770,000,000 people in the world. And the seven by itself is the end. It's like the end of the week, the seventh day of the week, the end of the rest, or the 7,000th year that starts in 220 years, which is 7,000, which is 1,000 years of peace, ending the 6,000 years of sort of progress, I guess you could call it. Trying to go forward and further. And then, there's 1,000 years of rest. We did enough. And we see already in the world that we've done enough. We have enough shit in the world. and they're trying to addict us to have more shit, because the only way they can pay for themselves going up into outer space if we buy all their shit. And one of the Congress women said, I don't remember her name, but she said he's really going up, on our money, because he doesn't pay any taxes. All the money he would have paid in taxes. Instead, he's getting into a rocket ship and going up, and they're selling, for millions of dollars. You can also go up because they have no idea what to do with their money. God forbid they should use it on the earth to make life better for the human being. That would get maybe the rich and the poor closer. They don't want to do that. They want the disparity. The more disparity there is, the more turmoil there is. The more turmoil it is, the easier it is for the strong man to take control. And the strong man rarely has the welfare of the people. It's an opportunity. Just like when the stock market goes way down, they all buy it all up. And then they sell it to people again. It's just really a racket. The whole thing is a racket. The whole idea of Rome is a racket, because Rome is based on just a whole bunch of lies. Starting with the naming of the planets after Roman gods. And the month, after Romans, whatever, it's all Roman bullshit, Roman mythology. There are ancient names for the planets that were known far before we had telescopes, all the way out to Pluto. And there are ancient names of the month, like this month is Tammuz. And we see that in the Epic of Gilgamesh, written after the flood, mentioning these months. Maybe not all 12 of them, but at least half of them are mentioned. I remember from reading it, Adar and Tishrei, and Heshvan was written. That's when the flood started, and the many of the months are mentioned, because these are ancient names. And since we all come from ancient people, then these names certainly are more relevant to each one of us than the names of Rome. Rome, that's just a way of saying Rome rules the world. Forget the ancient names. Now it's us. We have our mythology, and this is what you're going to do. And even when when people they go so far as to entering into people's connection with the Creator, and devise some really stupid story that the only ones who can go to heaven are through them. And this stuff has been repeated over and over again. And wars have been fought over and over again, and all for a lie. And the same thing with money. Money is just a lie. I mean, it used to be a time that people thought that if you had enough money, you could be free, but money doesn't make you free, and they keep ratcheting it up how much money is worth. And the thing is that money is overvalued. And the only way they can give it value is by squeezing the human being, that if they don't have money, they're not going to be able to live. They have to go live out on the street. And that's how they give money value. In the end, that I had this off day. It's just an off day. I think I drank too much sake last night. I've been drinking sake a little bit. I'm not a drinker. I had too much sake and just had an off day. Feel really low in energy. But I want to say this, that America, is an immigrant country. We're all immigrants other than the Native Americans. And in that, we're all equally American. And the Constitution is a contract between us immigrants who came to America and built America, us and our people before us. And the Constitution is a contract between the people and the government, that the government will be run by the people and for the people and of the people, but it seems to be run by certain people for certain people. So this contract is very much like a marriage contract, that in a marriage, particularly in a Jewish marriage, it is like it's like a business transaction. What's the transaction? What does the man want from the marriage? He wants that nobody else should have sex with his wife. Until she is his wife, someone else could have sex with her. But once she's married to him, that's it. She can't have sex with another man. That's what he gets. He can still have sex with other women. There is polygamy in Semitic culture. Goes back a long, long ways, all the way to Abraham. So there's not that big restriction on a man. I mean, it's a terrible thing if a man cheats on his wife. But it's not considered adultery, whereas a woman is considered adultery because that's what the man got in marriage. He's not going to have sex with another woman. What does the woman get? So there's many things that the woman gets from the man, and it's also basically sexual. That according to the man's work, that he has to be sexual with her at least so many times, a week, or whatever the situation is. If he's a sailor, the sailor's obligated to come back once every 6 months. I mean, if you marry a sailor, you know what the deal is. So there's a different, amount for different people and different natures and whatever. That's one of the things that, the woman gets, that she gets to have sex with the man, and the sperm is her sperm, and and she can do with it what she wants. Yes. And of course, there's many things that go on in marriage, but really they could all go on as a friendship. One could help one another, be emotional with one another. All these things could be, but the main thing of marriage is sex. You can't deny the woman's sex, and the woman can't go out and have sex. And so that's what the woman, in a sense, gives to the man. And so, in a sense, that's what what the people of America have done. The United States, they've all united together and said, we are going to help our federal government. We are only going to have this really direct relationship with our federal government, not with necessarily each other or ourselves or other countries. Everything says it is a contract between the American people and the government. This is a marriage contract. And says in the Talmud that the tractate of divorce comes before the tractate of marriage. And they say the reason is because the cure comes before the sickness. But there is a kind of logic to it that if because all relationships end, either someone walks away or someone dies. I mean, they're all going to end, and it's going to hurt. The deeper you get in, the more it hurts to get out. And it's part of what we understand we have to pay in the beginning. And it's smart if people say, and there's what part of the contract in the marriage contract is what happens if it's not working out and we have to divorce. And you can say, generally like the woman gets the house, the man gets the money, or however you're going to split it up, which is extremely relevant to our situation in America, where as a result of the government taking the money and using it for space or war or the stock market, whatever they're doing, they're not using it for the people. The people are living on the street. And this is really an abusive husband. There's no question about this. Is an abusive husband, and we want a divorce. And in a divorce, generally the woman, who are the American people, get the house, and the man, he gets the money. He's doing the business. So go have all your money, all your billions of dollars, your pedophile billionaires, and all this crap that money can buy, for really corrupt people. But we get the house, meaning any empty house in America, we can put someone in. Any empty building, we can use it for the good of the people. And we'll feed everyone. We'll take care of everyone. We don't need you. We need you for certain things, just like in any divorce, it's never a complete separation. The things that the federal government does well, and they do a lot of things well, that we want those to continue. But the not at the price of having people out on the street. I mean, that's just wrong. What are they going to do? Make another, commission or something? Look into it. I mean, this has been going on since the time of Reagan, who he famously, pushed out, all the people who were being mentally challenged out of places where they were secure and put them on the street. And it became a thing that everyone started to become afraid of being on the street, which was never a reality. In my lifetime, there was never a reality. There was always a place to go. And now, whole families are on the street. I mean, it's just, there's a whole kind of second culture that's happening on the street. And it's a real a dilemma. And therefore, we need a divorce. We need to put our people in houses. We can take care of ourselves and see if you can find some suckers to go do your work, to go into pay all this money to get into your stinking colleges so you can get some high-paying job to pollute our world more and push progress to the point where it's just a cancer. Who needs it, man? We got enough shit for 1,000 years. So enough. Anything needs to be made, we can give it to China to make. They got all the hands, man. China, India, they can make whatever we need. And America can go back to being a place of true freedom and a place where all peoples can mix their culture and their ways, and we can all learn to love one another, and we can be a true shining light on the hill to all the people in the world who they need some light. Thank you for watching, listening. Please go to my website, dovidhouse.com. Buy a book, man. Take a course. Do something. It makes me feel good, man. You don't know. I mean, it's been months since anyone has bought a book. Though I have some new things coming up, but maybe I'll talk about that at a different time. Anyways, thank you. Remember, mm, yes, the Richard wrote here that I can't summarize my question. I keep going, but that China holds America debt. Well, China can't cash it in because then the debt won't be worth anything. And America sold out long ago. And it doesn't matter who owns the debt. If the governor of the state says there's no more evictions, it means you don't pay your mortgage, you don't pay your rent. These are your houses. No one can throw you out of your house. If you need a bigger house, the community can find you a bigger house. And we all need to live securely. And China and America can deal with the money thing. I could care less, man. It just money is such a meaningless thing that's why they have to squeeze everyone like this to put some sort of money in, some sort of meaning into it. But it has no meaning, and it's just these are not things that we need to worry about. We need to worry about taking care of our fellow human being. We don't need to make some sort of big organization with a few psychiatrists. What we need is have time and place to sit with one another and talk with one another and hug one another, and without having to, I got to rush here, rush there, and fuck that, man. That ain't the world that we need to live in. That's a cancer. All right. Bye bye.